Thank you, Sarah. So, everyone, I am extremely excited to more so listen to my sister friend in the revolution, in this fight of life. My fellow artivista, Adia Whitaker, is with us tonight. Um, but first, I want to give a theme as to what is going on, why we're talking about what we're going to be talking about, and all of that. I want to usher in sending honor and reverence to a soul that has transitioned back to the heavens, D'Angelo. I've spent since
Woo!
yesterday educating people that weren't even born in the 2000s. This, I still have to say that over again. These are nearly 100 students of mine that are in their 20s. So that means that they were born like 2005, 2000, like around that time. Yeah, Adia's laugh. I'm like, yeah, I got that's funny to me. So it's also a revolutionary act to be intentional in sharing stories and just the music and have it permeate throughout spaces intentionally. Like, please make sure if you were a lover of everything that D'Angelo curated and his band, all the musicians, make sure that you are super intentional and not just continue to complain about what the younger generation don't know. We have to be the ones like our parents did, and aunties and uncles were super intentional about showing the music that came from their era. We have to do that as well. And so even my youngins here in this Zoom, when you talk about D'Angelo, you're talking about a musician, a gift, a presence that initiated and changed the whole state of R&B. Like, you had rhythm and blues, you had soul, but you had a person that said, no, this is how I'm going to express myself. And in the disruption, reshaped even the sound that existed even in R&B, even though he created, was a part of the creation of what is neo soul. So neo soul was one thing. You had D'Angelo, you had Maxwell, you had Erica Badu, and people that would follow. But he was so poignant and such a genius at what he did that even with the people that stuck to the traditional R&B, it changed their sound. So when he entered the stage, you guys, with people like myself, Sarah, and Adia, we was outside. We felt it. We was there. The MTV Unplugs, all the late night, all of, you remember the Chris Rock show? Remember Chris Rock had a live show and him sing? All of that in real time, you guys. When I say that D'Angelo changed the game, it is actual factual. It's not us just going over and beyond because of physical looks or anything. And when I say I want to tell a funny story, because we have to, I've been crying and going through all that, but Angie Stone, if you didn't know, was the person that produced his first album, Brown Sugar. Okay, so a lot of people, when we get in these circles, I don't want it to be like news is just saying that Angie Stone was no. No one in the industry knew what to do with this cat from Richmond, Virginia. And for some reason, Angie Stone was the person, born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina, but lived in New York at the time, that actually was close with execs and gave them advice. Another person that Angie Stone was like, no, you need to hook up with her and do something with her, was the Mariah Carey. So when I say that Angie Stone was a facilitator, she was a facilitator. So here's D'Angelo, a young cat that they didn't know what to do. And they was just like, Angie, can you do something with this cat? We don't understand his style. Like, he has the gospel, he sing, but he has like the falsetto like Prince, but we just don't know how to form. And Angie Stone was the person that was like, no, you need to hook up with Kadar and all of these people to get you to form into the person. And now it's the new genre called neo soul. So with Angie leaving 6 months ago and now him leaving now. It's like I just want us to stream and buy and send the music up so people, this is tied into the community. These musicians can get paid. All of these people like tithe to artists, feed families, run it back up, change the algorithm. And I'm gonna just give 5 seconds for us to just have like a moment of silence for D'Angelo and honestly for Angie Stone right now. So just moment of silence. Yes. Let's snap. Let's put the snaps in the air. Let's continue to lift up our artists and understand how dangerous art is because even though their bodies are gone, that music is still out there and we have the choice to keep pumping it out in these streets. Yes? And that's what brings us to the theme. We gotta give flowers to people when they are here. And when we left off last Sankofa session, we left off in the 1900s and we were talking about the Great Migration and talking about the reality of how people from the Southeast are now traveling West, Midwest, and Northeast. A lot of people take out nuance in history and they think like it's just an influx without understanding artists' place in it. A part of that, artists had to leave their kids in the South with grandmas. You had dancers that had gigs. You had musicians that had gigs. You had separations that had to occur simply because these artists knew that what they came here on this earth to do was this work. And it's some painful stuff that had to occur and they had to fight through it. But what kept them going? And that answer was based upon the artist. And that's where I want to bring in Adia to help us with continuing the context of the past, teach us how to have more longevity and figure this ish out along the way and not allow the pain, trauma, whatever you feel that may go into this artistic journey to manifest into literal sicknesses that may, I'm sorry to say, end your life. And we have to deal with, as artists, especially as artists of Afro descent, learning how to release and learning how to, as a community, teach and learn and receive ways and practical disciplines that can help us in our everyday walk, how to live longer, how to thrive longer, how to create longer, and not it just be this situation where it's just like, oh, here's a couple of works. Yeah, I tried. Or no, it's no more of that, especially during these times. The way that we're super intentional about some things, we got to be super intentional about self-care. Self-care looks different for me. And Adia, I love her because she's straight to the point and she's going to give it up and she's going to be raw and vulnerable. And with Sarah, I met Adia 3 years ago through Sarah with the first time that she did Liberation Academy virtually, and the information that she gave me even through the Stoner Rebellion even inspired me to not even belittle my own South Carolinian roots. Adia don't know that, but literally that's what happened within me. And I don't want us as artists, just because things seems easy to us, because we have the gift, this artistic gift, for us to begin to belittle it. And then we're out here in these streets where other people are dictating our own power and we aren't. And that's what tends to happen with artists. So I'm gonna give a formal introduction to this bomb mover and shaker, Adia Whitaker. Artistic director of the 25-year-old Brooklyn-based pickup dance and music theater ensemble Ashe Dance Theater East, and the 16-year-old Bay Area pickup dance and music ensemble Ashe Dance Theater West, has choreographed and performed contemporary dance, vernacular movement, Afro-Haitian dance, Haitian dance, folkloric song, and hip-hop theater in the U.S. and abroad for 28 years. Whitaker has traveled to Haiti, Cuba, Brazil, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, Belgium, Ghana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Antigua to study, perform, and teach dance. It's a lot more to be said about this powerful mover and shaker, but I'ma just start. Yes, I love the what? Carla. Yes, Carla, all of that. So I want everyone to simply take a moment to glean, lay on her bosom, and receive all that comes through Miss Adia Whitaker. Everyone give it up for Miss Adia
No
Whitaker.
pressuring, no pressuring. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. I got to sit here and I got to listen to everybody talk about what freedom means to them. And I think that for me, freedom is all of the things, right? It's the ocean. It's also like not uh, developing or understanding yourself in relation to white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism, right? It is not, I don't need a seat at the table. It's building my own table and sitting at my own table and visiting other tables. Um, Freedom is also knowing how to be uncomfortable and until the moment where you are comfortable and really committing your whole body, mind, and spirit to the moment of comfort and joy until it's your turn to hold the discomfort, because you can't know freedom unless you know the other side, right? um I'm very, very grateful to be here. I'm actually very moved by everything that you said about me, because I'm one of these people that I've been here for a very long time, and it's very when I hear all the things I've done, I'm like, oh yeah, I did do all that stuff, right? But I'm not somebody that is always receiving the grants. I'm not somebody that's always on the poster, on the TV, on the thing, right? And so um I have I have done this on my own terms. And so I definitely I consider myself to be a maroon. You know what I'm saying? A modern day maroon, because I've never ascribed to models that already exist. Um because I always was like, I don't want to be beholden to any systems that are going to muffle my voice or dim me. So, but that's also a choice that I've made, right? And it's also understandings that I've come to through living the life that I've chosen to live, right? Um, and so where am I starting? Because I'm like, there's so many places to go. I'm a part of the South Carolina diaspora as well. Like, I'm the first girl child on my mom's side to like be raised by their mother, because everybody else was migrating. My great grandmother used to travel to New York to swing dance and traffic moonshine, um, and then just come back to South Carolina to like have another baby, and then like dip to make some money in New York, and then come back and forth. So I have a bunch of family up here in New York that I've never met, because they like gun toting, moonshine, trafficking, swing dancing descendants. And so I'm their grandchild. And so um, I didn't grow up in South Carolina. I grew up going to South Carolina every summer to see all my people, but South Carolina is real strong in me. I'm the grandchild of Reverend C.J. Whitaker. So, I was going to the Baptist church. I was doing all the things. And so South Carolina is where all sides of my family became Americans. Um, they were pig farmers. They picked cotton. They did all the indigo, the tobacco, all the different kinds of farm work that people do. And I'm like their dream come true, right? So although they are very, very Christian, they pray for me and they wish I would dance for the Lord, I continue to tell them that I already am and I'm doing the work. Same thing as you. I'm walking in my priesthood, ashe. And so what I really think I wanted to bring to the Liberation Academy is, one, I wanted to talk about the Stonewall Rebellion, because that is really specific to American history and South Carolina. And I also wanted to talk about, sometimes when we get into talking about historical events, it can get stuck in a time frame. And so even though the Stonewall Rebellion happened in 1739, even though, I was not alive when my family was doing all these things, in my blood memory, in my DNA, I'm really blessed to have had to have a mother, to have a family that saw that I was a little bit touched, that I would by ancestral energy, that noticed when I was having dreams and I would wake up and say and do all these things, that they was like, how could you know that? How could you wasn't there. You don't know these people, right? And so instead of making me feel weird, they just made sure I stayed plugged into the art so that I would always have a space to transmute all of my high level of sensitivities. Right. This is a hard time for me in just life, because there's so much going on. There's so much flowing into me, and I'm just extremely sensitive. So my transmutation capabilities have also got to go up with the level of input that's happening. I also have to know, what are the things, where are my medicines? I know that I need to submerge myself in water. And if I get to a place where I'm crying all the time, then I need to go to the ocean and put my tears in the ocean. Right. And just give her the tears back to her. Right. Because they're hers anyway. So this is a time, this is a time that we're moving into Octavia Butler's dystopian future, if you will, you know what I'm saying? But some of us have already been here. We've already been, doing this folklore, living this life, catching these dreams, transmuting this heaviness in our bodies and in our minds so that we can stay alive. Because I always say I don't deserve to be incarcerated or hospitalized, because as somebody that lives in Brooklyn now, I'm from San Francisco in the 90s. Like, I'm a Skohegan. There's not even, I don't even know the faux Black people that live in Frisco now. What's up, y'all? You know what I'm saying? Because I came this way, but I come home every summer. So I'm definitely from Frisco. So I know the scrape of the Bay, right? And so do you want me to just go into talking about the South? So I mentioned South Carolina, right? Because, a lot of times when you talk about, African history in the United States, people do this whole, oh, there's no African-American history. Like, there's not, it's New Orleans, and New Orleans is amazing. Like, yes, bow down to the dirty ground. But South Carolina also has some things going on, right? And so I wanted to start with like the historical part, talking about South Carolina, the people, and then also talking about the indigenous technologies and sacred geometries and the folklore that does exist there, and the things that are kind of the ingredients of my work and of the body of my dance company. Yeah, we'll get to that. So let's talk about South Carolina a little.
You cannot have the complete story of American history without South Carolina history. You cannot have South Carolina history without Gullah history.
I'm gonna clap my hands, cause I want to. I'm gonna clap my hands, because I can.
In 2006, Congress established the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor as a platform for sharing the history and culture of the Gullah Geechee. Extending from just north of Wilmington, North Carolina, to near St. Augustine, Florida, and 30 miles inland, it is the only national heritage area that has a group of people as its subject, confirming the national significance of the Gullah Geechee.
When you talk about South Carolina being one of the wealthiest colonies, one of the wealthiest British colonies in the world, well, why was that? It was because they relied tremendously on the technical and managerial skills of a group of enslaved Africans who knew how to grow what became the most popular commercial export, which is rice.
The Gullah, also known as the Gullah Geechee, are descendants of people from Sierra Leone and other neighboring countries of the West African rice coast. They were kidnapped, enslaved, and taken to the coastal low country of South Carolina and North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. Over the centuries, the Gullah Geechee have retained a deep connection to Africa and a culture shaped by the dynamic currents of the Atlantic world. Africans from the Rice Coast had developed a system for cultivating rice that controlled the flow of water in and out of the fields. It worked perfectly for the southern low country. In the 18th and 19th centuries, rice created more wealth in South Carolina and Georgia than any other crop. By 1860, the South Carolina rice plantations were producing more than 14 million pounds of rice a year. Rice is a staple food in Sierra Leone. Most Sierra Leoneans eat it at least twice a day. For them, as well as for the Gullah Geechee, rice is both a favorite dish and a part of their history.
Colonists saw that these things matched and that they could grow rice here, but they didn't know how to.
We think Gullah came from the word Gola. The Gola tribe were rice-growing people in West Africa, and they were brought over to develop rice fields. They were pretty much left alone certain times in the year, and so they were able to really practice the African way of life. And so it has sustained itself over the last 150 years.
Family is another aspect that is so very important to the Gullah people. Spirituality, family, food, music.
Really what the Gullah Geechee language is an English-based Creole language. We can just drop one letter from a word and just change the sound altogether.
Kabbalah is in the mountainous north of Sierra Leone. As in the rest of the country, residents speak their regional tongue as well as a Creole language called Creole. It is similar in many ways to Gullah, which is spoken by the Gullah Geechee. Creole and Gullah are both Creole languages with roots in English and African tongues. They originated with the enslavement and trade of West Africans, allowing people to communicate across many different cultures. Gullah is the only distinctly English and African Creole language in the United States. Over time, speaking Gullah became something to be ashamed of.
It was the effort to get out of the Gullah Geechee culture, assimilate.
We really have to know the language to know what we're saying, and that what really made us ashamed of it, because people say it was broken English that we were speaking, but we were just communicating. I mean, we were talking. It was our language. And what people don't have a language.
I sold the sweetgrass baskets. It's an art form that was brought from Sierra Leone, West Africa, and it has survived for at least 300 to 400 years. And it was on the plantations where they needed the baskets for utility, for cleaning the rice and toting fruits and vegetables out of the fields. So the basket has a lot of history behind it. It's not just an ordinary basket, but it's very cultural, it's very important, it's very unique to the Gullah culture. And just anybody can't do a basket, at least not the Gullah sweetgrass basket. This basket has to be taught from a relative or someone in that community.
Rogbonko is a small village, the only place in Sierra Leone where women still sew coiled baskets. Sweetgrass basket making is closely tied to the history of the South Carolina Rice Kingdom. The ancestors of Gullah Geechee people used coiled baskets for hauling and processing rice and brought that tradition with them to America. In particular, the flat, wide fanner basket used for separating the kernel from the chaff was vital to the rice economy.
The Gullah Geechee people are unique, and among all African Americans, they have maintained the broadest and deepest set of African retentions within their culture.
In the Gullah culture, we believe in blood memory. Things that has happened to your ancestors, you can pull that same energy, that memory.
They believed in the magic that said they could become invisible and they could fly and they could be bulletproof and they could walk underwater. And chills ran up my neck because I've been telling stories about people who could fly for decades now. And that began to have even a deeper meaning to me. And I began to wonder about how we have carried these stories on and on and on in bits and pieces without even knowing where they started.
They were moving around in that circle. And that's the same way they moved around when I was a little boy, going to my grandparents, my great-grandparents' church down in Lower Lexington County. After church, everybody would stand and they would go around in a circle. And it just brought tears to my eyes.
For many years, a circular dance called a ring shout was a part of Gullah Geechee Christian worship services. Performed from the days of enslavement into the mid-20th century, the ring shout has its roots in West African rituals, in which participants move in a counterclockwise circle, shuffling their feet, clapping, and singing in a call and response style. Enslaved people often worshiped this way in small structures called praise houses, where they could practice their unique form of Afro-Christianity away from the eyes and ears of their white enslavers. Freetown was founded by formerly enslaved people, many of whom were Gullahs from South Carolina and Georgia. During the American Revolution, they escaped slavery, joined the British Army, and became known as Black Loyalists. Their first attempt to establish an African colony in 1787 failed. Another group of Black Loyalists settled in Nova Scotia, but there they faced harsh weather, broken promises, and racism. In 1792, more than 1,000 Black Loyalists left Nova Scotia for Sierra Leone, seeking a better life in Africa. In October 2019, ground was broken in Charleston for the International African American Museum. Among the honored guests was Freetown's mayor, Yvonne Aki Sawyer. The museum is being built on the Charleston waterfront.
This is the spot where almost half of all the enslaved Africans who came to the United States over the course of the entire transatlantic slave trade, this is where they landed. There is this amazing connection between Charleston and Sierra Leone, between Charleston and between Freetown. We had an opportunity to create a sister cities relationship between Charleston and Freetown. And so that's really activating these bonds. It's so important to go there to reconnect with our ancestry. It gives one a sense that you know, their place in this world is far beyond what we've been told.
So that video was made before the museum was finished. I just felt like it had a lot of useful information. The videos that are in my slide deck, I like search for all these pieces and I edit them together. So I can give you all the reference materials. Like I can write all my sources out at, you know, later, I'll send it later, but I have to find what I want to talk about, right? And so I think the reason why I wanted to show all of you that is because sometimes we start at slavery. We start the story at slavery, but there was so much before. Like they said, like these are scientists, these are mathematicians, and we descend from these people. And so you had waves of Africans that were coming from, you had the Igbos that were coming, you had the waves from Congo, Angola that were coming, you have the Dahomean wave that was coming, you had the most recent wave, the Yoruba wave. That's why so many people in our generation are practicing Ifa and involved in the Yoruba spiritual tradition, is because that was the most recent wave to come to the western part of the world. And so when they came to South Carolina, they touched on it a little bit that the planters would leave because there was yellow fever and malaria. And so the Africans that were coming had immunity to yellow fever and malaria, but the planters did not. So then that's when we see the rise of the overseer, because the planters had to leave because they were getting malaria and yellow fever, and the Africans had the immunity. So they had to hire, well, not hire, but they had to assign the role of overseer to other African people to then run the plantations that were along the coast. And this, because the planters left, this allowed them to have a higher level of African retention, right? And so Congolese, you know, when we talk about the Congo Angola people, Congo and Angola were across the river from each other. So those people were coming from that region. And so when all of these different kinds of African people were landing in these different places, they had to decide like what they were going to use, like what things they would what sacred geometry and kind of practices they would unify around to pray. And one of those things was counterclockwise dances, the Dikenga or the cosmogram, which we'll talk about later. But this circle with like a cross in the middle is a symbol that existed through and still exists in different places throughout the world, not only the African diaspora. And this is something that they all kind of understood, that if we travel counterclockwise in these ring shouts, if we're praying by a tree, we travel counterclockwise, we're going back into this ancestral energy to gather this energy from our ancestors and bring it back to this realm where we are, so we have some information about how we can go forward, right? And so honoring that ancestral connection and ancestor veneration has always been understood in African culture, right? And so for me, growing up in this society, I always had this connection to ancestral energy. And I was never in a space where it was like something that was okay for me to do. And still, until I got to San Francisco State and I took my first Dunham technique class, and I ended up in Haiti, and I ended up in Cuba, and I ended up in all of these ceremonies. And I was like, oh, this is the first place like that I feel peaceful. Like I feel nervous in the church, but I don't know why I feel so calm in the basement here with all the ofrendas. Like I'm good here. And so, you know, I there's a part of me that I need to go to a Baptist church and I need the singing, but I can live without the indoctrination. You know what I'm saying? There's a part of me that needs to go to a Vodou ceremony and be there up all night with all the people in the room. There's a part of me that needs to, you know, be with people in African spiritual tradition. But I am also very clear that I am descended from Congo Angola ancestors. My Yoruba ancestors need this. My Benin ancestors, my Dahomean ancestors need this. And so I'm very grateful that I've been able to receive the information from all of them as a creative to make, right? And so where the function of religion would come into my life is just simply as an anchoring practice, right? Because I crowned myself at a very young age because I was also somebody that people they didn't expect things of me. They thought I was like a little sister type, you know, they just didn't expect much of me. So when I delivered and I became who I was, it was kind of like, oh, I didn't even think she was paying attention because, you know, I'm a child of hip hop. So when I was in folklore rehearsal, I was like talking shit. I was about to go to the party after, you know, I had my little clothes ready to leave. You know what I'm saying? I was trying to look at boys, you know, I was doing all the things. So they didn't really think I was paying attention, but I understood because I was learning about breaks in traditional African music. That was the time where, I don't know if everybody's old enough for this, but there used to be a time where like there was this music video. So you come home after school, you watch all these music videos, and then all of a sudden it was like they decided to do fancier music videos. So they would show less music videos, and then like they would have like a break into someone's song. So if somebody like, I remember it was like Peaches and Cream, and then they would break into the new song that was gonna come out, and then they would come back. So for me, understanding folklore was like, oh yeah, that's how they break in the video. So I was understanding it through hip hop. Like I was understanding how the music worked and the pieces of the music and the drum language because of my connection to hip hop and growing up in hip hop culture, right? So my first point is that, you know, we talk about, like, even if we talk about Harriet Tubman, right? Queen Mother Harriet Tubman, we talk about, oh, she was formerly enslaved. Absolutely. But she was also Ashanti, you know? So we can also start from her Ashanti lineage and talk about she comes from a warrior tribe. So of course, that Harriet Tubman was doing what her ancestral lineage called upon her to do. And so was Nanny of the Maroons, right? So to get your mind in that place where we are developing ourselves in ways outside of the context of white supremacy, like despite of like everybody, they can do what they've been doing, right? But we haven't had a lot of opportunities to do that in this culture. And so the constant like psychic upheaval and spiritual push to do that can be exhausting, but it's necessary for a sound mind. For me, it has been, right? Because like I said, there's parts of us that we know, but we don't know why we have to put this here on the shelf in every house I live in, or we don't know why we have to have a purple blanket on the couch, every fall, so there's things we do, ancestral energies that we have been blocked from, I feel. And so that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. What's next in the slide? Does anybody have any questions? I think that would help me too, because I'm like, I could talk about everything.
Anybody got any questions? Hands raised. Oh, yes. It's Brown.
I have a question about the counterclockwise circle. You said two things, the cosmic something and this, and it was another word you said to talk about the
Okay, so
counterclockwise circle.
we're gonna jump to that slide. Okay. So this is called the Dekenga, right? The Congo cosmogram. So if you look at it, this is what is being traveled when ring shouts happen. There's also other Congo-based traditions, like you have the Hora and Capoeira. You also have in Bomba. That's also rooted in Congo traditions. So the thing about the Congo people is that wherever they went, they were most often the leaders amongst the enslaved Africans. They were most often like they were the makers of jazz, like they were the innovators. That's what I want to say. They were the innovators. If you look at traditional Congolese dance, if you look at the dance Zebola and you see the roll of the hips, they're just rolling their hips on the cosmogram. Like they are the axis, this vertical axis. And when you roll your hips, you're rolling your hips around the cosmogram. Yep. So let's talk about it. So if you get the yellow circle on the bottom, and it's the Masani, it's the death and transfer, that's the ancestral water. So the bottom of the cosmogram, when I was saying we go counterclockwise, if we're traveling from the east, right, the black circle back to the white circle, right, in the west, then that means we're traveling back down through the ancestral waters. We're gathering information, and then we are bringing it back into the realm of the living, right? So that is the function of traveling counterclockwise, is because we're going to gather information to then and trying to get as much information as we can from the ancestral world, from the unseen world, to bring it back to guide us in the world of the living, right? And so, if you look at the progression of life, right, you move from the ancestral waters into being born in the east, where the black circle is, and then your life between the black and the red circle, that's really like the height of your life. That's when you are living your life. Your life is, you're getting to the height, and you reach the noon, the 12 noon in the living world. And then there's the decline back into the ancestral waters. The Kalunga, that horizontal line, sometimes in Vodou culture, they say Anbadlo, which is under the water. And so in the transition from this form into the ancestral world, it is believed that you travel through the waters. You travel the waters of the Kalunga line back into the realm of the ancestors. Is that clarifying a little bit for your question?
Very. Thank you.
Okay. Can you go to the slide 15, the one that's one back from here? Okay. Oh, well, okay. Yes. So when we talk about a ring shout, this is exactly where the shouters travel counterclockwise to honor the ancestors. This is a way of traveling across time to connect the living, the ancestors, the creator, and other divine energies. If you look at how the Big Dipper travels, the drinking gourd travels across the sky, it also travels counterclockwise. So I don't think that's an accident, right? If our ancestors could read the stars and the Big Dipper that was leading them to freedom was traveling counterclockwise, and they were like, okay, we have information as is above, as is below, what that saying, right? So it was above them. It was also how they traveled. It was also when we move our hips, when we circle our hips, we're also embodying this Congolese energy. You have Congo in Cuba, you have Congo in Haiti, you have Congo in New Orleans, you have Congo in Dominican Republic. You have all these places that have a dance called Congo, right? And it has to do with circling your hips in this way, right? And so it's all connected. That's all I want to say about that. Right. Somebody said something about the Igbo I saw.
Yes, in the chat. Yes,
What was
Igbo is
that?
right in South Carolina. Igbo people believe this too. Yes, it's all there.
Right. So the Igbo people were also very important, especially when we're talking about liberation, because wherever they went, they all did the same thing. They were all like, you can't stop me from being free, right? We have Igbos landing in St. Simon's, Georgia, right? Where they walked into the water because they were like, we would rather, before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free, right? So they were like, I know that this body is only part of my life, right? The other part of my life is my life as an ancestor, and I would be rather be free as an ancestor than living in bondage, right? They would swallow gunpowder, they would jump off boats. They were often the maroon leaders in Haiti, in Haiti, in South, all these different places. So the Igbos are incredibly fascinating, just like the Congo Angola line, because throughout the diaspora, you can see there's evidence of what, like, who they are, right? So we can say that the Congolese were powerful leaders in the Western Hemisphere and that they were innovators. We can also say that that the Igbos were liberators and maroons and leaders of maroon colonies and unapologetic, like they were like, we are our own authority over ourselves. The Igbos were also really strong, so they brought a lot of them to South Carolina in the beginning. But like, for instance, they were such powerful resistors that in IET, they stopped bringing them because they would turn up so bad that they were like, no, we can't bring y'all here no more. And people that are descended from Igbo lineage in Haiti will tell you, I'm Igbo. They're saying, I descend from Maroons. I descend from people that always knew they were free no matter what, right? And the Igbos did the same thing in South Carolina, the same thing in Trinidad and Tobago. And so you have all these Igbo dances that exist, just like you have all these Congo dances that exist, as well as these living embodiments of these systems that we traveled with. And so unless we know to look for them, then we would just be grabbing on to what we've been taught as we're growing up, I think, maybe. Yeah?
That's so bomb you bring that up, because the other song, Spiritual, that went into gospel music that talked about Igbo's landing when they all walked in the water. One on that morning when this life is over, I'll fly away. And
Right.
ring shout, they would do this and do the ring shout. But that
Right.
the origin, that's a ring shout song. And then as
Right.
gospel evolved, it went into gospel music. So that's why a lot of people only know it as a gospel song, but
Right.
it's actually a ring shout song in honor of Evo's landing. But
Right. Right. So these are the things that are like right in front of us, and we like, and then Freedom, Oh Freedom became a civil rights song. So then you have the Igbo lineage and legacy traveling into the civil rights movement, traveling down to people like myself, right? To people like yourself that are like, I know I'm free. Like, you can't tell me, like, you can't stop me from being free. Right. And so I think all of these different, I was explaining to Kara earlier, is like all these different ingredients have landed on me, right? All these different like little, if I open the cabinet, I know if I'm telling a story in using dance or song, or I'm writing something, I know which ingredients to take from where, because I've been had the blessing of being able to sit with them even if people were telling me it was wrong to sit with them. They were like, no, 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 what are you doing? And I'm like, no, because I can, if I don't do it, then I don't go to sleep. And so I just wanted you guys to understand like the richness of South Carolina, because I just feel like sometimes, and then we also have to understand another misconception is that the drums were taken away from every African person in the United States except for New Orleans. And that's not true, right? Up here in New York, there are places that are now beginning to celebrate a festival called Pinkster, which was it's the oldest African American festival in the United States, you know, before even Juneteenth, right? And this is also something that came from the Congo, because Christianity was existing in the Congo since the 1400s, right? The Christianity that was in the Congo was infused with Bantu beliefs. So when Congolese people, like when the 11 Africans, they were on their way to Brazil, the 11 Africans that came to New York, the first African people that came to New York, they were on a boat on the way to Brazil. And they got intercepted. And instead of returning those Africans back to the Congo and Angola region, they brought them up to New York, right? And with those Africans traveled Pinkster, right? And so nowadays in New York, there's Pinkster festivals all over the place. But a couple of years ago, there wasn't. Right. But this is where counterclockwise dances, and they were allowed to play drums as well. It was kind of like a Congo Square situation because they had farms up here. It wasn't different than the plantations down south. Yeah. Okay. So there was if we're going to talk about South Carolina, we have to talk about the Stono Rebellion. The Stono Rebellion was significant because this was the historical event that got the drums taken away from African people. And so when we talk about embodying the African drum, this is one of the major American significant events. It also happened in other places, like in Trinidad, the drum was taken away, and still evolution of Pan, like all these different things. But in this country, South Carolina had more African people in the colony than enslavers. And so they had very strict parameters and laws already, because they were like, we got to check everybody down because there's more of them than us, right? And so I have a video. If you go to the next one, this is a piece about the Stono Rebellion, so you can learn a little bit more about that.
Just outside of Charleston runs the Stono River. When word of the fort reached this place, it inspired one of the biggest slave revolts in the history of the British colonies. It all started right here, the site of what was once a general store called Hutchinson's.
Sunday morning, September 9th, 1739, Hutchinson's store had been looted. Its guns and ammunition had been stolen. 2 shopkeepers lay dead, their severed heads lying on the steps of the store. Plantations on either side of the river were burning. An army was on the move, an African army.
They were headed for Fort Mose. They set out before dawn, a group of roughly 20 men. Their tactics were simple. They surrounded plantations, then burned them to the ground. The ringleaders came from the Kingdom of Congo, a powerful African state. Some had military training, and they had a plan.
Slaves marched over to Pon Road, which was a road that, if you took it south, it would take you down into Georgia, down into Savannah, and ultimately all the way down to Florida. They were beating drums. Now, the beating of the drums is terribly important because that shows us that they were attempting to draw other Africans into their midst.
By afternoon, the rebel army had grown to nearly 100, and they kept moving south, along what today is this highway, which still leads from South Carolina to Florida. But they didn't make it. Just 20 miles outside of Charleston, an armed militia caught up with them in a clearing in these woods. The survivors faced a gruesome fate.
A number of the people who were captured, they'd be beheaded.
Beheaded?
They would be beheaded by the militiamen, and as was a usual practice during the time period, their severed heads were placed on top of posts along the highway.
So right along here,
yes,
we would have seen the heads of these rebels.
Yes, that's right. And that was meant to instill fear and to teach a lesson to all who observe, to try to discourage people from rebelling.
This must have been the planters' worst nightmare.
It was. Absolutely.
I mean, worse than their worst nightmare. They couldn't imagine that these Congo Africans knew anything about guns and ammunition.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely right. This was the worst insurrection to occur in 18th century British colonial North America.
In the wake of the rebellion, South Carolina imposed harsh new slave laws. They banned drumming and literacy and set drastic punishments on runaways. But no laws ever could force the slaves to accept their fates.
Okay, so as a result of the Stoner Rebellion, then the legislature that was formed as a result of the Stoner Rebellion is the Negro Act of 1740. And this is the actual legislation that took away the rights and named, like, let's see, which slide is this? Slide number 6. Can you go to slide number 6 for me? In each of the slides that have words, I also recorded myself reading the words just for accessibility for everyone, just in case when you receive the slide deck, if you're like, I'm tired, I can't read all these words, I've also recorded myself saying them, so you can also click on the slide when you receive it. So this is the legislation that made it illegal to play drums, raise and grow your own food, learn to read and write, move freely or move abroad, assemble in groups, and earn money, right? This is when it actually becomes law, right? The Negro Act of 1740. So in terms of American history, the two things that South Carolina we need to know about are always the Stoner Rebellion in 1739 and then the Negro Act of 1740, yes? Because this is when you see resistance starting to percolate, right? I'm not gonna, I can't play drums, but if I turn my hands into drums, you can't cut off my hands because I gotta work. So I'm gonna just play this juba pat this juba on and this ham bone on my body. I'm gonna turn my hairstyle into a drum. I'm gonna turn my voice, the voice of the preachers became the drum. And how we wear our clothes, the way we talk to each other, the way we cook our food, the way we do everything became the African drum, right? And so that kind of moves me forward into where people like you and I come into it, because, when you are studying folklore, or often when you are around many African traditions, it's like there's an altar over there, there's an ofrenda over there, but sometimes we're the candles and sometimes we're the altar, right? And so, and that is a real thing, right? Because, my teacher, Alicia Ray Pierce, said everywhere the African steps, he sees God, right? Before she passed away, that's one thing she left with me. She said, everywhere the African steps, he sees God. In the wall, in the concrete, everywhere, we are everything. So I have been, in terms of my own path in maroonage, I think that it's important to understand that our ancestors knew that wherever they were, they saw God. They were God. You know what I'm saying? And so we, in order to light ourselves up as the candle, we have to know what that is. In order to be the water on the altar, we also have to know what that means for us as individuals, right? If I know I'm descended from this lineage from the Congo, then I know that I'm gathering all the seeds that I can find from this lineage to try to help me to move into the future with this indigenous technology that my ancestors have passed down to me, right? I know that I'm trying to find counterclockwise circles, travel in counterclockwise circles. I know when I dance any dance that it has a Dahomey root and I'm like rock, like my shoulders go, like nobody can tell me that I am not Dahomey, right? It doesn't matter what DNA test you give me. I can feel my ancestors with me, right? And so I think that this is also the blessing and the curse, because the other thing that happens with me is because I'm not somebody that has achieved fame in the American definition of what fame or recognition is. Some people would talk about me as a nobody. And so when I was in my graduate school, I was like, that's very interesting to me, because I know that I am a KNOW body, and I know that I know things. And so whereas it was kind of turned on me as like, oh, that's a dear, she's a nobody, she don't have this, she didn't do this, she did da, right? All the life I've led and all those beautiful things that Kara was saying about me, to many people, I'm a nobody. So instead of it being like, it used to really hurt me, because I'm also a mother. I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I'm a dancing mother, which is also a choice that I made. And if you have children, as a dancer, sometimes people treat you like you died. Like they're like, oh, you have babies. Oh. But if I'm steeped in all of this African culture, there was something in me that knew that was also a part of who I was, right? Multiplicity, duality. We come from the stars. We are the stars, right? And so that said, I have had, from my journey as a dancing mother to being called a nobody by my peers who actually love me. They don't mean anything by it, but I had to really sit with that, because I was starting to internalize that as a sensitive person and be like, well, I haven't done this. I don't have all these besties, and I'm not in front of all these red. And then I was like, but you know what? I know some things. I know some things just from being alive. I know some things just from having studied and sat down. I'm from a generation where we didn't have all this YouTube. We had to sit and get Mr. Miyagi, like wax on, wax off, and underneath old people that they didn't care if you was bleeding. They would just be like, hey, that's what we do it. We bleeding today. Trying to learn Yambalu on the floor in Haiti. They was like, yes, blood is coming from your shoulder. Fine. So that's what I'm saying. And this generation, they have so much technology that they don't necessarily have to go and sit up underneath the old people to get the information. And sometimes you have to live the life in order to do the dance, in order to sing the song, right? And so in my investigation of myself as a nobody and my company, Ashe Dance Theater Collective, I came to a point where I was like, I need to create more sustainability for myself and my company. So I was reading Dr. Yvonne Daniels' book, Dancing Wisdom, right? And I started to see diagrams in different books where people were putting, where different spiritual energies or personifications of nature were in people's body. So I started to try to reach for these scholars and ask, like, why are you putting this deity in the elbow? Why are you putting like Oshun in the face? So I was like, what do you mean? And so they couldn't really talk to me. So I started to talk to a bunch of priests in a bunch of different traditions. And I think that I surmised that it had a lot to do with imagination. So I started to define the biological systems of my dance company so that I could understand how to help her move better. So I looked at the cardiovascular system of the dance company as a dance called Yambalu, because Haitian dance was the first drum language that I learned and understood. I looked at where the Dahomean and Yoruba systems were in the body of my company and what medicine they had given to my company. I also was able to understand that I wasn't a company that was going to have an endowment. I wasn't a company that was going to have these big galas and things like this. I was a shapeshifter. I was a company that lived on the bodies that came to make it happen, and then it would deflate and kind of like disappear until the bodies would come back and make it again. So in Congolese culture, you see them, like European people steal them and put them in museums all the time. These statues, these figures that have nails drawn into them. And they're very serious. The Nkisi are very serious because usually the nails that are driven into the structure are a pact that the community has made to do something, or they are medicine. Sickness has been taken from, from a person's body and driven into the the figure to like draw it out of the community. So these figures that people have in museums, I can't even look at them. They're too strong for me because I'm like, why would you take that? That's some villages, that's some people's medicine. Like they prayed over that, they extracted something, and that has a purpose. Like there's a function behind that. And so when I started to look at those, I was like, well, that's what Ashe is. We take all the pain, we take all of the things that we need to transmute, and we put it into her. And then it transmutes, it releases, because energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? So it changes. And then once the medicine has been delivered to us, because it's such a powerful transfer, we have got to rest after it happens. It's not this like we do show after show after show, because to dig it out from this Dahomey line, to dig it from this Congo line, it's tiny pieces that are stacked up together, because we're not just saying, oh, I need to do something because it's Congo and I need to say this, right? Something starts to come out and you start to study it and you start to be like, what is this? Why am I singing this song? Why do I feel like I need to do this thing, right? Why do we have to keep on going here? And as you get deeper, it always lines up and reveals itself like, this is my Congolese ancestor asking me to do this. This is my Yoruba ancestor that needs me to do this. There's so can I go to, let's see what slides. I get really excited, y'all. So sorry if I'm like, and then. Because listen, the nerdery is strong. Slide number 20, please. Okay. So the connection between everything we were learning about South Carolina, right? I gave you the history so you can understand like the blood of this body, right? So in an effort to create more sustainability for myself and Ashe Dance Theater, I created a no body, an imagined embodied physiology of the African-based movement folklore that has inspired my work for the past 25 years. So I'm taking all of that information about the stone rebellion, all the Congolese ancestors that I have, all the Cameroonians, all of these things in me, and I'm putting it into this body, mixed with everything that my teachers have taught me and how I've been able to archive it in the body of my company, right? Can you go to the next slide? And you can play that video.
I've chosen to personify this imagined body in the way that many attributes of nature, or divinities as Dr. Yvonne Daniel identifies them, are personified and embodied in various African folklores and spiritual traditions. Human beings are also personifications of nature. We, the folk, the people, hold the lore, the stories, in our bodies, and our bodies activate the world. Identifying anatomical connections between what Dr. Daniel classifies as the Dahomey, Yoruba, and Congo-Angola-based movement folklores of the African diaspora and the human body has given me an authentic entry point into somatic and mindfulness work and an alternative lens into the wisdom that my teachers have passed down to me. It has also enabled me to connect the dance and music folklore that I do and study to the biological places in the body that share a similar, if not identical, function and folklore. To begin, I separated this imagined body into 3 areas of focus: the dream catcher, the wind catchers, and the rain catchers. In this body, the crown of the head to the shoulders is the dream catcher. The shoulders to the solar plexus are the wind catchers, and the belly button to the genitals are the rain catchers.
Okay, so the function of doing that was, one, it gave me more information about all the information that had accumulated in my company over years, so that I was able, it gave me more, helped me teach the forms that existed in the company better. Right? That was the first thing. Second, it also gave me information about like running my company and also feeling comfortable in the way that I've chosen to run my company when it's so different than my peers in the dance world. right? And so in breaking down all of her systems, I was able to then further develop myself as a teacher and further develop myself as an artistic director, right? Instead of like just taking everything and feeling this, just putting it onto stage, I actually activated the systems to then activate everything on stage. Yes? Okay. And then what does the next slide say? What happens next? Okay, so these were the three areas, right? These were the three areas of the body. You can go to the next one because I think I take my time with each one. So I broke down all of the pieces. I have an amazing husband that is an artist that drew everything that was in my mind. And so I'm very lucky to be like, hey, and the head is the dream catcher. And I looked at the brain as the forest. And I was looking at like the tops of the trees as the cerebral cortex of the brain. And so you see along the back of the skull, there's a serpent in the back, and there's also rainbow serpents that are coming up like the vagus nerves inside of the head. And so those are kind of some energies that when we dance Yambalu in Haitian dance, we see Dambala and we see Aida Wedo. Dambala represents peace and purity, and Aida Wedo represents hope, and together they represent divine spiritual love. And so there's a conversation between life and death, right? When we sing, right? My mother loves butterflies, so I did this whole research about butterflies and kaleidoscopes and the butterfly effect, to kind of understand my position, how I would represent what happens when we sing our songs, right? We're exhaling this kind of like ancestral energy, but we're also inhaling this new energy from the audience and the people that are the participants in the dance theater rituals that we participate in. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is the brain in the forest that you just saw.
Traditionally, the warriors are personifications of nature in the Yoruba religion and movement folklore of Nigeria, Cuba, Brazil, Haiti, Trinidad, and other places in the African diaspora. These warrior energies exist inside of all of us. These warriors defend and protect our energy the same way that the meninges, 3 thin layers of tissue that cover the brain, protect our brains from injury and infection. It's a scientific fact that our brains float inside of our cerebral spinal fluid. In this imagined anatomical interpretation anchored by Yoruba religious and movement folklore, the tree roots in the brain forest home of our masculine warriors are submerged in the waters of our feminine warrior. They, the masculine warriors, all live inside her head. But of course, in real time, everyone's warriors and brain forests are different. Everyone's warriors and brain forests change over time. So then, the questions become, what is your brain forest and who are the warriors that protect it?
Right. So the idea, when I'm using this as teaching material or even exploring like her as a shapeshifter, because maybe her brain forest changes, right? And that brain forest is my interpretation of a number of systems, right? Because checking with Babalaos, checking with Iyanifas, checking with all these different priests and all these different spiritual traditions, they're like, part of it is also how, you are the master of your own head. So how all of these energies live in you is important. It's not just like you go into a system and then you just you're also nature and embodying these energies. And so throughout the slide deck, it goes into the wind catchers, it goes into all of her systems, but I also wanted to share that with you because I wanted you to have I wanted you to see the future of the work that has happened so long ago with those enslaved Africans that rose up during the Stoner Rebellion, like to a descendant of the South Carolina diaspora, and gathering all of these seeds from all of these different parts of places that I've learned to then move forward, that I go back to and not only get information to make art with, but also I go back to understand how to move forward, to help me in those moments where I get caught up and I start to compare myself, or I start to think about like, oh, I'm going to be 50 years old this year. Like, what is it enough what I've done? Have I left enough crumbs for future generations to find? Um, have I left enough crumbs for me to then cultivate as an ancestor when it's my time? And so I hope I connected those dots clearly. There's so much information in the slide deck. I don't think that I can get to all of it, but I really wanted you to see like the Sankofa of it all, right? The past, then coming into the present, and then going into the future. And so I think it's best if I can answer questions, because I also, or talk to you, because I think maybe sometimes when we do this, we make these short moments and we don't ever have a time to have a conversation about things when so much is we're absorbing so much. So
I
let
totally
me
agree.
know.
Oh my gosh. So, you guys, you have an assignment for the next 29 minutes. Drop your questions, feelings in the chat, and I'm going to get my questions off. And if we run out of time, we will still get these questions answered by a deal later. Right, a deal? Because you want to
Yes,
help
and
these folks.
there's questions in the deck like that can help you think on things. Can I just show them one of those in the deck? Like, we were looking at the dream catchers. If you look at slide 26, after watching all the dreamcatcher stuff, like, you have your own dream catchers. You have your own, I don't even know if there's snakes in your head, but you might have some other kind of creatures, right? I also want to give props to Adrienne Marie Brown, because this was my emergent strategy, right? This was like, how am I going to move forward? How am I going to look at systems of nature and create fractals of those systems and use them? How am I going to utilize these as seeds to grow myself forward? So each of the different catchers has questions for you to enjoy and really think about once you get to the slide deck. Erica Mitchell says, can you show the slide with the Dikenga with the sacred geometry? The Dikenga, is that right? The one we were looking at before?
Adia, what in the Hizel happened in your life that made you commit to laboring in getting this information? What happened, and it could be layered, what happened in your life that made you take the first step? Because usually this is what happened, where you get like, oh, okay, no. I got to study, and I got to study in this particular way for me to be able to fully be me now. And sometimes we don't listen. So even if there's a point where you didn't listen and something else happened, where it's just like, oh, no. Now I really got to commit to this, whatever this is, and go down this journey in order to fully be the full creative Adia Walker. Like, Whitaker, what happened? I want to get to that.
Well, the other thing about me is that, possessions are only violent because you resist them and you don't surrender to them. You know what I'm saying? All that falling and jerking and kicking, if you surrender, then it may not be all that, right? And so, I don't surrender all the way to the possessions, even at this age. I still am like, I wonder why I'm in rooms with people in all white singing these songs. And then somebody had to be like, hey, because maybe you the people. And I was like, am I the people? Okay, I'm the people. Sure, I'll be the people, but I think I'm a lot of people. And so the thing about me is that I think it's a privilege to have been able to listen my entire life. Like, go this way, I'm going that way, right? I had to take a PE requirement at San Francisco State. I was a regular Frisco youth. I had no drums. I didn't have no African cloth like the Oakland people. We wasn't from the Panthers. We was just bad hair care products, and we was fighting. I went to Wallenberg. We was out. We wasn't like cultural and all this, right? We was just trying to be alive, right? And so when I went to San Francisco State and I saw all these like good hair grease, dashiki wearing, and they knew the drums, and I was like, oh, they're so nice. What is this? I'm from urban youth, single parent home, the whole thing. And I'm just like, well, they seem really nice, and I got to take this PE requirement. And, Dr. Rose, the teacher, she was talking about how she was a Christian minister. And she's like, yes, but my people are from New Orleans and I teach Haitian dance. And then a lot of like Christian people got up and walked out. And I was like, ooh, scandalous. It's like a novella in here. So I was really like, ooh, they leaving. So it was just, I was 18 years old and I was like, ooh, I'm gonna stay with her because she did something bad and I like her. So then when I started to dance to Haitian drums at San Francisco State, I just knew that I felt less angry and I could get more stuff done in a day. Like I was like, if I go to this class, then I'm more productive because Frisco Black girl. So I was like, okay, I'm not concentrating on the dumb shit. I'm like learning. And I was a ballerina. So they used to tease me because I was really skinny. And so they were just like, they used to call me ballerina. And I was like, whatever. So it was like, I had all these kind of big sisters I never had before. And I was kind of mad they was calling me ballerina, but they were checking for me. So it was just like a something I never experienced. So that was the first thing I remember. Right. So that's how I was like, okay, I think I fool with y'all, but I'm still from Frisco. So I don't trust you all the way, but I kind of like it. Right. And I never did this before and it makes me feel better. So that was the main thing. Like, oh, it makes me feel better. I'm not as mean. Then I saw this show at San Francisco State and there was this little 4-year-old girl and she was this little Cuban girl and she was dancing. She wasn't like, oh, a kid dancing so cute. She was busting it down. And I was like, I want to go to where children that age dance like that. Like where they always knew the drum. And that's when I knew that if I had children, I was like, my children will always know the African drum because then they'll never not be able to find their way home. They just need to know it. My children, I got a little punk rocker on my hands. I got a little big video gamer, but they know the African drum. So I was like, I want to go there. And that's how I ended up in Cuba. Like never left the country before, 21 years old, got on a plane, got lost in Mexico, had dinner with a matador, teaching myself Spanish. And all of a sudden I'm in Cuba and I don't realize that I'm about to take class from Los Muñequitos de Matanzas in Afro-Cuba, like the royalty. So they walk in front of me and I'm like, oh shit. Like, these are, oh no. So then I'm there, right? And then it's just magical experiences. And then, it was things like that. I'd be looking at something and I'd be like, it's time to go to Brazil. And I'd end up in Brazil and all these things would happen in Brazil. And I'd be like, oh, it's time to go to Trinidad. So I'm always like, something will tell me. Like the next thing that told me is I had a dream of this figure, like this egungun, that was scaring me in the dream. And I kept on asking, are you nice or are you mean? And every time I would try to leave the room in the dream, it would get up and shake, right? And so if I don't make it, like if I make it, and then it's also like I have to go to the continent. I think this is my next mission. I think I have to go get it like I have to get it charged and then bring it back so that it's consecrated. So, things like that. I just be like looking this way and then I'd be like, okay, sure, let's go. All right. Lots of time in oceans, watering holes, water sets me loose. Any kind of submerging me in water, I'd be like, let's go. It's time to go to this way, So I don't know. There was so many things. There's so many things.
I love that. I'm about to go to the chat because there's so many bomb questions here. I'm going to combine. It's a lot of questions that are super similar. So first, what are some of your daily practices that you do to further your dance and connection with your ancestors? And let's connect that. And how do you repair severed ties? So it's like, what are the daily practices with connection? And then if ties are severed, or what do you need to what are you working on every day to rehabilitate severed ties or be a better listener or blase?
No, I'm no good when it comes to that. So when we talk about, we think about Brother D'Angelo and, I'm also a cancer survivor. Like when I was making that embodied research, I had cancer and I didn't know it, right?
Wow.
And part of me, my alert was like, something's wrong, like things were happening in my body. But I also went into that research so hard because I was like, something's wrong and I don't know what it is. And let me learn these systems before I get up in these other systems and they're just going to start to, you know. And so I'm just happy to still be here because the blues can kill you, you know? And so I wish I could sit here and say I'm somebody that has been initiated and sat in all white, and I have a council of elders that's checking for me, but I'm a mother. And so I'm already initiated just because I'm a mother, right? Those were two of my initiations. I am still alive and I had cancer. And so I've been initiated in that way. And so I wish I could say there's a daily practice. But I am trying to hold on, you know, honestly, a lot. And my children and my family and my company have been my anchors in this realm, you know, because it is you do need anchors. You do need reasons to keep trying and to keep going. And there are a lot of people that have spiritual houses and they bathe in flowers every Sunday and they do all of these things. I make sure that I take a bath every day and I make sure that I lay in that bath water. I make sure that's what I can do right now, right? Realistically, like raising a 14-year-old that's very, you know, she's something, and my neurodivergent 10-year-old, and running a dance company on both coasts and teaching full time, you know, I'm trying right now. Like I have to be very honest. I'm trying. And part of me being well is coming to spaces like this where I know that I'm not invisible. That I know that like the things that I've done matter to somebody and that somebody is watching and going to take this information and do something that with whoever they are, because it doesn't matter. Like I have my road and I am who I am, but I will not be in this form one day, you know. And when you've been faced with your mortality, everything is different, you know. And you know, I have had the terrible, not terrible, I've had the honor of transitioning my company member. And I've had, you know, I'm in the place that I've never been. Like I've always been able to listen and follow the road. And now something's being given to me that I don't want for the first time. Like I don't want to know how to help people transition. But I understand that I had to have a little bit of cancer so that I would be ready for this next part of my life.
Wow.
Because I am a storyteller and it's gone beyond the place. It never was actually in the place of me just wanting to be on stage to tell a story. It actually is like, this is my priesthood. And this is, not only does it keep me okay, right? It also keeps many people okay. Yeah. And so I know if I tell my stories, then people will tell their stories and it will do something. And I've seen it do so much for so many beyond like I sat and watched a show and it was just really good. And that's most important to me because this survival music and dance comes from the people. And so if it doesn't go back to the people, for me, there's no point, because the stage and lights is going to be there and maybe it won't, because look where we are now. But you know what? The tree will be there. I will be there. Somebody's grandchildren of some niece and nephew that I love will be there, because I planted those crumbs. I planted those seeds in humans. And so Yeah, I wish I had some like, this is my daily practice. But I got the aunties praying for me too.
No, when I say that's why I started off with real questions to get real answers because I ain't about the coddling out here in these streets. Life ain't gonna coddle you. So even in these non-toxic safe spaces, ain't no
Yeah.
training wheels on this bike. You bet we gonna
Yeah.
watch you from across the street run into that mailbox. That mailbox gonna topple over, and we gonna
Yeah.
look at you like, "Yep, you gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Get on up there." So the
Yeah.
last question, because it's actually two questions that's once again similar. And the way that I started it off was by lifting up now ancestors. People want to know, living or your ancestors, who informed your body of work. So can you call out the names
Mm.
of all of those living or have already transitioned that have formed and shaped Adia Whitaker today?
Okay. Let's see who came first. I think Malonga Kaskolord was my teacher, and he was my first dance father. He was my first father figure. Um, he was a big deal for me. I was very young. I'd never met anybody like him, and he changed my life. Um,
Yes, yes, yes. Give it up for Malonga.
Carlos Aceituno, Alicia Ray Pierce, um, so many. There's just so many.
Yeah, no
Um,
pressure. You're just lifting them up, lifting them up.
Rochelle Vivian McNias, from Central and Grove, Frisco. Um, my grandma Perlina, she was the lady that raised all the women in my family except for me. Um, but we had the same birthday. And so she raised my mom, she raised my grandma. But she's always the one that would talk to me. Um, my pop, Reverend C.J. Whitaker, because I'm the youngest girl grandchild. And he loved me no matter what. Um, Ifedayo Olapejo, Michael Sampson, Kabibi Dillon, Tajim Sylvester. I don't want to forget anybody. Oh, Zeke Neely. Oh, Zeke. Uh, Yagbe. uh,
Yes, in the chat they said they're all so proud of you. They're all so proud of you. So it's no forgetting. They all
no, there's so many. I wasn't expecting that question. I would have had a list. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, so many. I can't think. I was very overwhelmed by that question. My apologies.
No,
There's so many. I'm like a real Bay Area grown person. So all the people in the, I was, running down the streets. Miss
I just have
Blanche
to
was
say, I love when tears come, and I feel very moved that you allowed that in this space. And my mom, who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, she says when you cry, you water the garden. So you just watered all of our
crying. I mean, I'm also a Cancer. Okay, for all those
Come on.
cancers, that's our secret power. I'm a Cancer, so I be crying, honey. I'm not afraid to cry.
Cry on.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people, and they all talk to me, and they're all still here with me. So, yeah.
I love in the chat. Remember that we call their names for us. Words are for us. Ancestors do not need words. They know what you do and why. All right, let's speak.
Yeah.
All right. No, that's most definitely the truth. Before I go into a closing the deal, I'm gonna close, sorry, with your words that once again impacted me. And you guys, this is a part of the research that she did, but the way, even simply her using the feminine to describe her dance company, saying she instead of it, or what westernized society would typically use when in talking about a noun, and that noun being a dance company. She uses she, but this is how she describes it. I've only seen her body, and her meaning Ashe Dance Theater, as a shape-shifting kisi, masking and possessed in performance. As soon as she leaves the stage, she collapses into a sheet of skin, pegs, razors, and nails on the floor. In between the times we meet, she lies limp, lifeless, and drained. She drowns in tears and suffocates as she fights to get back up. She dies waiting for me to prepare the next formula that will give her body form, activate her next possession, and animate the colorful stories in her skin. I'm always too late to save her. I say goodbye until we meet again. She has no blood, breath, or bone of her own, so she survives on ours. The dancers, musicians, vocalists, artists, filmmakers, photographers, and believers who inflate her piece by piece. Our labor and imagination give birth to her over and over again. Each time, she is different. That's Adia Whitaker's words talking about her performance. When I say that, I looked at that and I was like, oh, the devil is a lie. This heifer better know who she is and what she came here to do on this earth. And yes, I hope that y'all understand that we are all out here surviving. We are all out here as artists trying to make it. And we're also trying to even discover who we are at the same time. And as you heard from a very accomplished artist who is also a facilitator of other artists that have to navigate that whole world simultaneously, and as a mother and as a wife and all of that good stuff, I hope that you don't feel alone anymore. I hope that you feel or walk away from this Sankofa session like, oh, it's not going to be this point where I feel like I'm running in slow motion through sunflowers because I've arrived. No, that's not going to happen. The way that we out here, I tell my sons, I'm a mother, 18-year-old, 14-year-old, and 5, the most randomest of increments of age groups ever, but God is good. I'm out here and I'm watching people my sons play video games, and I looked at him once again, struggling teenage life or whatever, and I'm like, dude, how on this video game do they tell you that you made it to the next level? And he's like, the next level is harder. There's no, if it's pomp and circumstance, that junk lasts for 2 seconds. The way that you know that you passed level 1 to get to level 2 is that it gets harder. And you are popping collars like, yes. And I'm like, how are you over here playing a video game, popping collars, assuming glory because you saw that the next level is harder, and you pushing through and it gets harder and harder and harder. That's the congratulations. So Artevis, that's the congratulations. That's what you're going to get. Every level, new devil. And you got to start from the ground up like, all right, I'm in a new room now. Next, I'm in a new room now. And just look at that as an opportunity to continue to grow to continue to evolve and actually figure out like, oh, that's been Kara all the time. That's been Sarah all the time. That's been Adia the whole time. And the reason why I said freedom is like a mustard seed, because going back to my country self, everybody want to use that whole scripture like faith is like a mustard seed, faith is like a mustard seed, without understanding what a mustard plant is. A mustard plant, all people that study plants know that you never plant a mustard seed next to any other plants. It has to be set apart. Why? Because it will choke the life out of everything around it. That's how powerful the plant is. So imagine, oh, that's what old dude was talking about, having faith like a mustard seed, because your faith, your belief in what you create and how you move out here in these streets need to be so powerful that you got to set yourself apart. You got to make decisions to be like, I can't be a part of that friend group. I can't gossip about these people. I got to move different out here in these streets in order for me to really be impactful, in order for me to really be me out here in these streets. I got to do and walk different, set apart. Look at yourselves as powerful human beings. No more belittling. And I promise that I will wake up every day and do the same thing. It's for me too. It's for me too. Adia is inspired. As I said 3 years ago, I'm looking like, yeah, I grew up on Rinse Shout. Yeah, I know all these songs. Yeah, I do all of this stuff. And I ain't never wanted to share it. But here I am listening to this heifer, and I'm like, oh, Lord, conviction. And it's like, why are you just letting this sit, just idle? Why aren't you sharing it? So we're all inspiring each other. Grab what you can hold on when you can hold on to it and never let it go. And keep on being out here inspiring people, because as Adia just found out, you don't know who you're inspiring. You really don't know. So just be you, don't stop being you. And everyone give a round of applause for our guest, Adia Whitaker. Please make sure that you do your due diligence and follow everything that she does. If you go to the freaking New York area and you see that her group is performing, you better be the first one to buy tickets. If she does anything virtually, I want like intentional support. Let's be intentional in our support as Liberation Academy members. And that's all I got to say. Sarah.
Boom. The mic has been dropped. Adia, any
Yes, ma'am.
final words?
Pressure. What do I say?
No
My
pressure.
black
You don't have to
future
say
is
nothing.
bright as can be. My ancestors gave me everything I need. I keep my head up so my soul will stay free, like lions and cheetahs and birds in the breeze. My black future is bright as can be. My ancestors gave me everything I need. I keep my head up so my soul will stay free, like lions and cheetahs and birds in the breeze. That's it. That's the song. If you say it over and over, it'll work.